Welcome to this quick course on Just Enough Python. Title of this course is Just Enough Python. So Python is a very broad programming language. You can use Python for building websites. You can use Python for data science, and that would include machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence, so on and so forth. You can use Python for automation, things like building spiders for the web, to crawl web pages, or to automate some of the jobs like DevOps. So these are all examples of business cases that you can use Python for. But we are not interested in all these use cases. We are only interested in this use case. Python for data science, machine learning, and deep learning. Now, the reason why I stress on this so much is because if you want to learn Python from an automation perspective, if you want to automate website building, if you want to automate some DevOps scenarios, or if you want to create some websites, then the approach to Python might be slightly different in terms of packages that you want to learn, so on and so forth. But if you want to use Python for data science and machine learning, this course is right for you. The course is divided into 4 days. So day 0 is just the introduction, and that's this day. And day 1 is Python basics. Day 2 is data structures. Day 3 is we continue the Python basics. And on day 4, we talk about the standard library. And that's it. We are trying to deliberately keep this course really simple. There are so many aspects to Python, but we're not interested to learn all of them. Just enough Python so that we can learn data science, machine learning, and deep learning using Python. All right. Now, the question is, why Python? Python is the language of choice for machine learning and deep learning. I'm not saying Python is the only language, but Python is the most popular language, and we'll see why in a second. I'm going to talk about 4 different points to show why Python is such a great programming language for data science and machine learning. Number 1, it's essentially top programming language. When I say the top programming language, it's the top programming language irrespective of the business domain. For example, here are the rankings as of 2019 of all the programming languages based on how many searches that people do in Google for that programming language. For example, how many tutorials or how many searches are there for Python. The share of that entire search is 27%. That's a huge share given that there are so many different programming languages. And then next comes Java, and then JavaScript, C#, PHP, so on and so forth. And remember, these are not domain specific, meaning I'm not saying this ranking is specifically for data science or machine learning. This is in general. So that should give you a quick idea on how popular Python is as of 2019. So this ranking has been pulled out of this website. You can just go to this website and you can see how popular Python is here. Also, there is a website for data science called KD Nuggets. It's a very popular data science and machine learning website. And it has done a poll and found out that Python is really getting ahead of all the different data tools. For example, R is another popular programming language specifically for data science and machine learning, and that's around 50%. And Python is racing ahead at 65%. So the first thing was popularity. The second thing is, how about the salaries? The mean salary of a machine learning engineer with Python is around 110, and that's just the median or the mean. So you can range all the way from 80K all the way to 160, 180K, depending on your experience, depending on the specific skill set. That's how good the salary is for a machine learning engineer with Python skills. I'm not counting bonuses, I'm not counting anything extra, just the median salary. Okay, so salary wise, Python is good for machine learning. Number three, technically, Python has extensive third party libraries. And I'll talk about it in a minute. What do I mean by third party libraries? Now, if you have some experience with any programming language, you would know that the language itself is just the beginning. You would need so many different packages, so many different libraries that somebody else has built that you would be using as part of your project. And specifically for machine learning and deep learning, Python has such a rich and extensive third-party libraries that you wouldn't have to go any other place. You can do everything right inside Python. So in case you're brand new to programming, third-party library, think of it like a boost, right? Thing that you get in a game. You get a boost and you'll be able to do so many different things, right? Or in other words, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. For example, do a particular type of classification or do a job, let's say, whatever it is. Now, you don't have to rebuild that again. Python has a library, or rather, there is a library written in Python that you can just use like a Lego. For example, in deep learning, we have some packages called PyTorch or Keras, TensorFlow, that's from Google. So these are very popular third-party libraries written in Python for deep learning. And for machine learning, there is scikit-learn, a very popular machine learning package written in Python. Now, if this is all confusing to you, no worries. The point being, if you pick Python, there is so much of help for you. Most of the packages are already built in Python, so you don't have to run here and there. It's all there for you in Python. Probably the only other programming language that comes so close to Python in terms of having so many third-party libraries is R. But when it comes to deep learning, R suffers a bit because most of the deep learning packages are written natively in Python. So for machine learning, R is really good. For deep learning, R is basically thrown down to the second rung. And essentially it depends on the Python packages ported into R. So R is nevertheless a very good programming language for machine learning, but Python kind of trumps R and is on the top at this point in terms of having the support for so many different third-party libraries that can help with machine learning and deep learning. Point number 4 is Python is developer friendly. Let me talk about it for a bit. What do I mean by saying when Python is developer friendly? First thing, Python is a dynamically typed language. What do I mean by dynamically typed? If you are from a C or C++ background or Java background, you would understand this. If not, you can just ignore this point for now. But let me just briefly go over what is dynamically typed. For example, if you want to define a variable called name, okay, name equals name equals Ajay Tech or Ajay. Now, in a C or C++ or Java, you would have to say what kind of a variable name is. Is it a string? Is it an integer? Is it a floating point? For example, in Java, you would have to say string name equal to Ajay. But in Python, you can just say name equals Ajay. So this is Java and this is Python. What is the difference? You don't have to specify this. You don't have to say string name equal to Ajay. You can just say name equal to Ajay. Now, there are some difficulties with this and there are some advantages with this. In programming language terms, this is called static typing. And this is dynamic typing. What is meant by typing? we are specifying what type this is, right? This variable is. In this case, we said this is a string variable, right? In Java. But in Python, you don't have to say that because it's dynamically typed, meaning the type of that variable is determined dynamically. So that is one. The second point is Python is in general concise. To write the same thing in Java will take a bit more programming. Let's see an example. For example, let's say here is the program to just print a hello world. All it does in Java, of course this is Java, all it does in Java is just print hello world. And in order to do that, you'd have to write these 3 lines, 1, 2, 3. Just to print a hello world in Python, all you have to do is say print hello world. Now, if you are from C or C++ programming, probably you can understand that it's not much different. Java is a little more verbose, but Python is very concise. Now, just for printing a hello world, probably it's equivalent to C, but if you do a little more complex programming, you'll see that it leaves C behind like anything. Python is actually a very high level programming language. It's not a low level programming language like C. For example, in C, if you want a structure like a list, right? A list. There's nothing like a list in C or C++. But in Python, a list is a given. You know, it's a standard inbuilt class. You don't have to worry about it. So to create a list in Python is a one-liner. But to create a list in C is probably a huge package in itself. The point being, Python is concise. Another point is that Python is a glue language. What do I mean by a glue language? By a glue language, what I mean is it can have the best of both worlds. Let me give you one simple example. If you want to do numeric computation, like for example, there's a huge array. You know, there's something called as a sparse matrix. That's really huge, you know, thousands of columns and hundreds or thousands of rows. And all of them are numbers here, like 1.0, 1.2, 1.3. And this is thousands of rows or hundreds of columns and hundreds or thousands of rows. To do a numeric computation like this in Java or any other high-level programming language, it's going to be a nightmare. It's not efficient because you are essentially doing the computation at a very high level. But when it comes to Python, Python handles things differently. Like I said, Python is a glue language, right? So what Python does is, when required and when a library is available, for example, to do all this computation, there is a package called NumPy. Don't worry about what it is at this point. It's a package. It's a Python package. And when you want to do any computation on this matrix in Python, you can take the help of NumPy. So Python takes the help of NumPy package to do all this computation, and NumPy under the hood takes the help of C or C++. In our case, in NumPy, it's almost written in C. So in all the computation is done in C, and the results are returned back to Python. Now, this is what is happening internally. You won't even know that this is happening. All you have to do is just use the package NumPy. That's it. And this is just one example. There are so many different examples of packages that are written in a rather more efficient language, a language that's more closer to the machine. But to you as a programmer, everything is in Python. Now I understand that it's difficult to follow at this point without knowing the specifics. But the point I'm trying to get at is, Python combines the best of both worlds. Python is a very high level programming language that can use packages written in a low level programming language and packaged up in Python so that your interface is just Python. You don't have to know C or C++ or any other programming language. All you have to know is Python, and all you have to build is in Python. And this package encapsulates or stands as your interface to the lower level computation that it can do much more effectively. So that's one of the reasons why I say Python is a glue programming language. There are other reasons, but that's not in the context of machine learning. In the context of machine learning, this is a good example of why Python is such a good glue language, because although it's a higher level programming language, it can make use of features in a lower level programming language like C or C++ to run things much more efficient. Number one, it's a top programming language, and we have seen examples of programming language rankings in 2019 that says that Python is almost around 27% in terms of how popular it is, in terms of its mind share of the entire list of programming languages. The second thing is, it's if you know Python and if you know machine learning, the salaries are very good. The mean salary is around 120K or 110K, and then that's just the mean or the median. So the prospects are good. Number three, extensive third-party libraries. The support that you get in Python to do a particular data science or machine learning job meaning a project, is enormous. Anything you want to do, there is a package for you, and that's huge. Not a lot of programming languages can say that in the context of machine learning, because currently most of the development, especially in deep learning, is happening in Python. So that way your choice of Python is going to be awesome. And number four, Python is a developer friendly programming language. Python is developer friendly, and we have seen some examples. Python is concise. It can make the best of both worlds, the lower level programming language and a higher level programming language. And we have discussed that with the example of Python being a glue language. And we have seen an example of why dynamic typing in Python makes programming easy when compared to, say, Java or C, where you have to do static typing.